and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
There's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on podcastufo.com. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. And tonight for our guest we have Donna Walker. Again, like last week, not a name a lot of people have heard of. Very interesting. I think you're going to really enjoy this. And by the way, last week's guest, George Gaines, I seem to have gotten an extra bunch of email. He's a nice guy. A lot of people really enjoyed it. If you haven't listened to it yet, check it out. And so before Donna tonight, we have the news with Alejandro Rojas. So stay tuned for that. That's coming right up. If you support the show, I want to thank you. And it's easy to do for $2 or more per month. You can see that information on podcastufo.com. And if you'd like to listen to the whole show for free, there are a couple of ways you can do that right here every Wednesday night at 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on podcastufo.com or on PSN Radio. And also, if you want to listen to it on Thursday evenings from 10 to midnight, it's on the Dark Matter Digital Network. So that's it for me. Welcome to the show, Alejandro.
Hello.
Hello, and you are a new homeowner. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling good.
You're not feeling good. And you're a trooper to come on.
I'm not feeling very good. No, I'm exaggerating there. It's for comedic effect. Yeah. But, and drama. Bring some drama into the show.
Yeah.
We should add some drama. I should, I don't even know how to do drama, though, I guess. I was going to try some drama, and my girlfriend watches Housewives, so I was going to try to use that kind of thing and to tell you, hey, you did this to me or some. I don't know how to do it, though. I don't know what to say, so pretending to be sick is all I can do.
But you're not pretending. You do have a summer cold. Oh, yeah,
I do have a summer cold, and I do feel like, I think just the best thing to do when you get sick is to rest and take it easy, try to de-stress. And I actually, I feel when I really started getting into meditation, because I'm into meditation, which to me is just advanced relaxation, I got sick so much less. And I think when you get sick like this and your body's just telling you, hey, dude, take it easy, man. So that's what I got to do. Because like you said, I moved, got a new home, and that just was a ton of work up until late last night even.
And then I'm getting if you've never gone through that before, it is stressful.
I think everybody's probably gone through a move, except for the little guys maybe out there. But it's supposed to be one of the most stressful things, something like weddings, moving, and public speaking, surprisingly, is up there.
Wow.
Surprising to me because I love public speaking. I'll be doing it in a few weeks in Florida.
That's right. Someone just called me today and asked me if I was going down there.
And you're not, though, right?
I'm not. I can't make it.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. It's going to be a big turnout, it sounds like.
Yeah. During my talk, I'll do a moment of silence for you not being there or something.
Okay. Sure, that'll work.
They'll love it.
Let's, since we're on that subject real quickly.
Yeah.
Why don't we just quickly go, can you go over a few people that are speaking there and when the event is and all that?
It's like in August.
Okay.
And there is, I don't think Mark's speaking, so he's not. Let's see, who else? No, he's not speaking. Actually, two cool people who have been on your show who will be speaking. I think even recently you had Rich Hoffman who will be on.
That's right.
And then he'll be talking about the Homeland Security case that was investigated by the SCU, which is the Society for Scientific Ufology. And his colleague in that organization, Robert Powell, will also be speaking. He's the director of research for MUFON. I forget his name right now, but there will be a gentleman who is from Norway who has investigated the Hesdalen Light. So that's exciting.
That is exciting. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I'm particularly excited about that one. But a lot of other great speakers, and I feel real bad that I'm forgetting them.
No, that's okay. I just pulled up the list. So
okay, but I want to plug. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
I was going to use this opportunity to plug my show because I've let you plug yours on mine during the news. So I hope you don't mind. And don't cut this because we're not doing live right now. But please. I did speak with Morgan Bell, who is doing the, he's a director for Florida MUFON, and he's helping organize this. And he sent me audio from these great YouTube videos that he made from all of the speakers, and I think they're really cool. And so I'm putting them all together, and that'll probably be my next show is all of these YouTube audios playing. And what's great about this is that all the speakers kind of talk about themselves, what they're going to talk about, and how they got into this field. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, will that video be posted on your...
No, this is audio. This is my podcast.
It's all audio. Oh, wow.
He's already got the videos up. On the MUFON website, you can see the videos. But some people like to listen to podcasts instead of videos, and maybe some of you have seen one or two of the videos, but not all of them. But I'll put them all together on a podcast. So I think that'll be a fun, show for an hour and a half or so to listen to all these great people. And what's going to be really great about this show is at the beginning of the show, you'll be on to give us some news and stuff.
Wow, awesome. So the rundown real quickly is Robert Hastings and, of course, Alejandro Rojas, Ben Moss and Tony Angiola. Cool guys, fun guys. Bill Schroeder, Cheryl Costa, David Marler, one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah.
Erling P. Strand, John Greenwald, Kathleen Martin, Viola Harris, Peter Robbins, he is the MC, Rich Hoffman, Richard Teamy, and Robert Powell. That is the lineup. And it's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel bad for forgetting so many of those because, it is a great lineup. That Morgan has done a great job putting all those people together.
Yeah, a lot of people are talking about this one. It should be a real good one. So what is going on for the news?
Well, speaking of Florida, it's only fitting that we talk about a case from Florida. And this is a video, an interesting video that Roger Marsh just posted to openminds.tv. This is actually a case from the archives, so all the way back in 2012. There was a video that this person got in Dunedin. I don't know if you're familiar with this town, Dunedin. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but it's a town in Florida where these people saw what they believe to be a boomerang-shaped UFO. This is at night. It was about 8:40 p.m. They were driving. They felt this object was 200 to 300 feet across. And you can see the video. The video actually is pretty interesting. It is a grouping of lights, and the lights are different colors. In some of the stills that we provided on the website, you can see that. And it's a short video, but it's pretty interesting.
Great. Well, I'll check that out. No, I have no idea. Never heard of that town before. Florida. Usually you hear the same towns over and over again, but not that one. Not familiar with it.
Have you heard of the town Dubai?
Little small town, yes. What happened there?
Well, in the Dubai is in the United Arab Emirates, and I just thought of this story. Whenever I think of there was this video that was put out that was allegedly UFOs. This isn't the story I'm talking about. This just always comes to memory when I think of this area and UFOs. And Vegas, I was in Vegas a few weeks ago, and the video turned out to be the guy filming some of the lights. I think it was in Caesar's Palace. So, the background looks like the sky, and he's filming the lights in the ceiling. And it was a video that went viral. People still believe that's a UFO video to this day, but it's not.
Wow.
Yeah, but this is a different one. This one actually is recent. This is from July 11th, 2016, and this was taken at about 3 a.m. Near the police station at Bin Laden Signal. And, of course, this isn't Osama bin Laden, but the bin Ladens are a big popular family, of which Osama bin Laden was just one of many of the sons of this big, rich family. Mm-hmm. But so at this place named after the bin Laden family, this person saw what he said he thought was an airplane or a star. But then he said it moved very fast and in different directions, that there were actually 3 lights and it looked like a triangular shaped object. So he took some pictures of it, and you can see the pictures online. It's a little difficult to make something out, but it is kind of interesting. But yeah, this is a photographic one. It's not immediately, you can't just identify it quickly like often you can. So it's hard to say exactly what this is. Of course, in this day and age, it is possible that it was a drone. But this person, by the movement, really, even with the movement, I guess it could be a drone. But people have to check it out and see what they think.
I think there was a sighting in Dubai a while back that was a drone, right?
I can't remember.
Yeah, it was going up one of the really tall buildings over there. And there was some controversy about it because it seemed to shoot up really fast. You don't remember that, huh? No?
No, I can't remember that one. It sounds, let me see. I was just going to do a quick search at our website, because if it's not on there, it wasn't.
It didn't happen, right?
Yeah. No, I can't see anything in particular about it.
I may be thinking of a different city. Could be one of those awkward moments again.
Oh, you know what? Here it is.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we didn't write about it because this was a bad one.
Oh.
Because this was obviously a light post. I do remember this one. So this was just in April. There was a video of a light with some sort of streaking happening under it, almost looking like a craft moving upwards very quickly,
right,
or it beaming a light to the ground. In actuality, and I think you can tell this very easily from looking at the pictures, and that's why I didn't get too excited about it. It is a lamppost that is just distorted from motion blur.
Oh.
So because this person was in their car, took a picture of the lamppost, and of course the lamppost looks weird because she's moving in a car.
Okay, so let's move on.
Let's move on.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I remember those ones?
I don't know. Martin, come on.
Yeah. Well, what else is happening?
That's about it.
That's it. All right. Thanks so much, and talk to you next week.
Talk to you guys later.
All right. So hang in there for the music break. We'll be right back with Donna Walker. Welcome to the show, Donna. Donna, you there? I'm not hearing anything. Your mute button must be on, Donna.
Hello, how about now?
There you are. How are you?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah.
Welcome to the
Good.
show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. I love the show, and it was really nice to be invited.
Yes, you have called in a number of times, and you had a lot of good things to say, and you and I have met. And I'm going to give a little teaser out there. Within the first hour, I'm going to say something really unique that Donna and I have in common, and I'll leave that out there as a teaser. So for now, Donna, why don't you tell the listener a little bit about yourself and what got you interested in the UFO subject?
Well, as far as my background goes, if people didn't have a chance to read the bio, my background is that I have been a professional licensed social worker for most of my adult life. I hold a degree in human services, a bachelor's degree, and a master's degree in counseling. And I spent most of my professional career doing acute care and medical social work in a hospital setting. So that's my professional background. I was born and raised in Boston and Boston area, and I developed an interest in UFOs at a very early age. I was trying to think about why and when that was, and I really can't pinpoint it, but I can say it was probably around the age of 5. I remember hearing about these UFOs or flying saucers and asking my parents about it, and they were unable to explain them. They said, well, some people see them, and some people think they're from another planet, but nobody really knows for sure if they exist or not. And I think I was hooked at an early age at the mystery of something an adult could not explain, something that some people witnessed, but there wasn't an explanation. And I think that sense of mystery kind of hooked me in. And so from an early age, again, nothing that I can really think of in particular. It was the days of the Twilight Zone and the Outer Limits and a lot of those sci-fi things. And so that may have influenced me, but anyway, I was interested, and I would say at the age of 10, I remember being at the dentist's office and seeing a magazine, Look magazine, and on the cover of Look magazine was a story about a couple who had allegedly been abducted by aliens, and so at age 10, I read that story. I was really intrigued. Became a big aficionado of that particular story, and read everything that I could for years. In the days before we had the internet, it was just books and the occasional television show or something like that, where you had some information about UFOs and that sort of thing. So
Just before you move on, pardon me, in the Look magazine in particular, was that a cover story, or was that just something you were thinking?
No, in 1966, it was a 2-part article. In 1966, it was the cover. It was also the cover in a newspaper in Boston. People don't really know that, but it was actually first reported in a Boston newspaper article, but I remember it mostly from I was just 10. My mother let me walk to the dentist's office, and I'm reading this story and totally mesmerized by it, intrigued by it, wondering why everybody isn't talking about it, because it's pretty amazing. So anyway, those are my early, the earlier kinds of interests that I had, and anyway.
Before you move on from that, I just want to say a little bit about the Betty and Barney Hill incident. That I lived 5 miles from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where they lived, and I never saw the articles when that came out, but I did hear about this post office worker and his wife supposedly being abducted by aliens, and it was like crazy. And it was, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, just right over the border for me. So I thought it was just some type of local story that nobody else knew about.
So when you said you heard about it, you mean word of mouth or
yes,
neighbors
totally
and
word of
people
mouth.
in the town?
It was in someone was talking about it in my school.
Okay. Did you hear about the guy and the woman, that type of thing?
Yeah,
you
right.
mean? It was just, yeah, okay. Wow. Well, I honestly, this is interesting to me as we talk about it. If I hadn't been at the dentist that day, I may have never, I don't know when I would have heard about it.
Right.
I think about that, and I just happened to see it. So I might not have heard it for years to come until, later when the book was released. I think Interrupted Journey came out in
70s something.
No, 70s, in the 70s. Yeah. I think that John Fuller actually wrote the book around in the 60s, but the movie came out in 1976. John Fuller wrote a book, and I don't know the exact dates. But anyway, I did read that book. I did see the movie. That pretty much was one of the biggest cases, I think, at that time that I knew about. And so that is pretty much, until that point, my experience with UFOs and an interest in particular with the Betty and Barney Hill case. So around 1973, my brother, I lived in Rockland at this time, Rockland, Massachusetts, south of Boston. My brother, he's a year younger than I am, saw what he thought was a star in the sky. And he wasn't sure if it was a star or if it was, maybe it was a star, or maybe it was an antenna somebody had installed and had put a little light on top of it, but he had never noticed it before. And he watched it for a while, and to his surprise, it started moving very slowly across the sky, and he started wondering what could be stationary for so long that he thought it was either a star or a light, and yet it started moving. So he was maintained, his visuals on it, and it moved very slowly across the sky, and at some point it started approaching our house, and it was summer, and it was after 11 o'clock, we were in bed, and he said, there's something in the sky that's really weird, and so my mother, my two younger brothers, neighbors, and so forth my best friend happened to be sleeping over, and we looked outside our window and right above the tree line, and I did give this some thought too. I'm not good at spatial things like how many feet, but it would have been maybe 3 stories high, the trees, outside my house. There was an object, totally stationary for between 5 to 10 minutes with a rhythmically a light going on and off that right above the tree line, definitely, intelligently controlled, definitely had some substance to it. And it was really life-changing in that we were all there looking at it and saying, well, it's not a plane. It's not a what can hover? Well, a helicopter can hover, but it can't be that low and not make noise at all. There's no movement of trees or any kind of leaves or anything like that. And so we kept looking at it and ruling out anything it could be. And it was very profound to look at something and say, well, I can tell you what it isn't, but no idea what it was. And so I watched it, was transfixed as the light went on and off, and kept watching it to see what it would do. And in a blink of an eye, the light came on, the light went off, and it was totally gone out of the sky. It had completely blinked out, and although it had taken a long time to cross the sky, it took a blink for it to totally disappear in front of all of us. And so I didn't know what to do at those days, but I called the Weymouth Air Force Base and said, have you seen anything unusual? And there was all sorts of giggling going on the other. I was a teenager. They were, thought this was hilarious. And no, there was nothing. They saw nothing on radar. And that was it. But it was really interesting to actually see something that you can't identify. You can't, we ruled out everything. And in those days, I don't know what that could have been to be totally still like that and not make any sound whatsoever.
Right. As far as you know, pardon me, as far as you know, there were no other witnesses besides your family?
Well, my family, the neighbor. I'm grateful for every crazy thing that happens to me, and we'll get into that later. I have witnesses, and I'm grateful that these things don't happen in isolation. And so So aside from my closest friend and neighbors, and I've just recently found out that my best friend, who is still my best friend, her husband, they didn't know each other at the time, but he also saw it. So, this was just recent. But there was nothing in the newspapers. Nobody else that we talked to seemed to have seen it, except, again, the neighbors, and no reports. But honestly, Martin, I don't know. I was a teenager. I don't know that I looked that hard, but there was nothing. There wasn't big news in any event. So anyway, but it was definitely something that I don't know at this point in time that there is even an object that I can think of that would be above the tree line that long and be silent and then disappear. I'm not sure all these years later, even now, there's anything like that. So
now, was it talked about much in your family after that?
By me, because I was the only, I'm still the only one that talks about it. I met up with my friend recently, and I saw the face. The face is, oh gosh, I know it. It's coming. The story's coming out, and no, and I don't understand. My mother got bored watching it, and she went back to bed. And I'm like, this is the thing. I don't understand. This is a thing we don't know what it is. Well, that may be, but she went to bed, and so it was talked about by me, but really nobody else seemed. Even my friend will say, "Sure, that was weird. Yep, it was unidentified," but she wasn't that amazed really, and isn't even now. She'll say, "Yep, that was weird. Don't know."
Oops! Watch your. Just be careful your keyboard on your phone.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that was that. So that's the end of that story. I made my little attempt to report it. Was giggled at, and that was the end of that. So we skip ahead to a few years later. I went to college, came home one weekend, and my mother had reported that my brother, again, a year younger than I was, had come home one evening, probably around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and he was hysterical, literally hysterical, crying and screaming, and, must have been 18, 19 at the time. And she didn't know what to do. He hadn't appeared to be doing any kind of drugs or drinking or anything. And he said that he had been at a party with a friend, that they were leaving the party, coming across the wooded area near a pond near our home, and that his friend was somehow put to sleep, and he was taken by a craft that was on the ground, and he didn't see anything in the sky. The thing was already on the ground, had been taken, and they had done terrible things to him. And he was sobbing, crying when he was explaining this all to my mother, who didn't know what to do with him at that hour of the morning, and he had no history of this, and she was beside herself, I'm sure. And said that they had done some terrible things to him, and told him things like that they had been observing him for many years, for his entire life, and that they could take him whenever they wanted. They had taken him before, and they could take him anytime, and that they were interested in him particularly because of some mechanical abilities that he had. And in fact, he was sort of a prodigy in that when he was 3 or 4 years old, he could, take things apart, disassemble and reassemble things, and it's really quite extraordinary. And anyway, by the time I got there, he was experiencing some symptoms which now I would recognize as post-traumatic kinds of things, some anxiety and difficulties. And I thought, well, gee, what do you do with that? I mean, how do you help somebody? My mother certainly didn't know what to do, and I thought, well, I don't know if this really happened, but whatever happened, he's had some sort of an event which has caused trauma. Again, no other history of this. You always look for history, patterns, attention-seeking things.
Did you sit down and talk with him one-on-one as like brother, sister to brother? Right. And he now, in a more relaxed state, than when he must have been, repeated basically the same story. So he said, I never want, anything like that to happen to me again. And very obviously traumatized. And, it may have been weeks by the time I got home from college. But he was having some difficulty coping. My mother didn't know, what to do. And you think, well, do you bring him to a doctor? Do you bring him to a psychologist? And you think, that path at that time, was going to go directly to, it was the path then was probably, this is a delusion and that sort of thing. So I thought, well, Benjamin Simon, the psychiatrist who worked and treated the Hills, may still be in practice. It was early 70s, and it was possible that he was still in practice. And again, without the internet, like what did we do? BI before the internet, I don't know, but I called directory assistance for Boston and now,
asked
did you
for
just
Benjamin
remember
Simon.
You just remember Benjamin Simon from just reading? You totally remembered his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Totally have always had a really great memory from an early age. Remembered it, whether it had been by way of reading the book or the articles, or I will say to me it's a little strange looking back that at such an early age I was reading all of that stuff and really into it. But I did remember the name, and I called directory assistance for the Boston area, got a phone number, called the number, and I said, am I reaching the psychiatrist Benjamin Simon who treated the Hills? And I was prepared for a number of things, like he doesn't take these calls, or any number of, it's not the same Benjamin Simon. And they said, yes, it is. And I said, well, I have a situation. I have a family member who is reporting an experience, and I'm having some difficulty coping, and I am not at all sure what to do. And they took my phone number, and I thought, well, good luck with that. I mean, this fellow probably gets calls from all over the world all the time, and I doubt that he will call me back. And he did. He called me back, and he spent, I'm guessing a good half hour on the phone with me, and I explained what my brother's experience was, and that I was hoping, I guess when he did call back, I thought, well, he'll say, yes, I've had a number of these cases since that I treated the Hills. I'm sort of the expert in the field. Bring him in. I'll be happy to treat him. or I'm so inundated by these patients, I can make a referral to somebody that will, be understanding and open-minded. But that's not what happened. What happened is he said, well, even though I had been portrayed in Interrupted Journey and the movie as having believed the Hills story, in fact, I never believed that they were abducted by UFOs. I don't believe in flying saucers. I did say that I didn't believe they were lying and they were hoaxing, but at the same time, that is not, I never, it was portrayed that I was being supportive of their story, and I don't think that's what happened to them. And I was floored because I had been I don't want to say a fan of the story, but I guess I was a fan of the story. And I was devastated. I'm like, what do you mean? You're the doctor. That was lending such credibility to the story that an MD was involved. I mean, this is an MD in Boston, supposedly prestigious practice, who is treating this person. And he said, no, that was totally not totally reported. Yes, I did say no overt lying, but on the other hand, it wasn't within his realm of reality that that's what have happened. So he explained to me what he thought had really happened, and I think I've said this on your show in the past. I don't know if this could happen today. It was a public case, so I'm not sure. But because of confidentiality situations, I'm not sure that he could have spoken to me so freely. And what he said is, this was the early 1960s. It was in the height of civil rights. This was an interracial couple in White Bread, New Hampshire. Barney had many difficulties with stress, coping with this interracial marriage. He apparently had an ulcer, had some, a lot of difficulties, and he saw this as a combination of some delusions and some manifestations of anxiety. And I know probably people are, just saying that can't be, but just bear with me for a minute. That there is a psychiatric condition called folia do, I believe it is, where two people can share the same delusion. And mind that this had occurred in 1961, the incident itself. And it was a couple of years later before they sought the hypnosis. And so there was a time period of, a big gap. And they had sought out his counsel and treatment to help with anxiety and help cope and try to figure out what had happened. So anyway, his conclusion was, as the treating psychiatrist for the Hills, they did not experience this, in my opinion, and that they had another thing going on, and it was a kind of combination of dreams and beliefs and delusions and that sort of thing. So it was quite shocking to me, and it was like bursting my balloon, and I thought, oh, geez, that was like the best case and whatever. But yet I was left with, the situation with my brother. And so having said that, he said it. Well, and so therefore... Yeah.
Just before we move into about your brother a little more, I'm sorry to have interrupted you, but what are your feelings now about the Betty and Barney case after you had heard directly from Simon himself?
I guess so. I want to say from the beginning that I believe something is happening in the world. I believe that there are too many credible people having these experiences and sightings. There are just too many, so I believe something is happening. However, in this particular case, I really questioned it. So, and I didn't think I would go down this path exactly, but years later, I did do some more research into the Betty and Barney Hill case. So what I'm trying to say is, I believe that people are having experiences. I believe that there are people are seeing things. However, I'm not sure about this particular case. That was a huge blow in that pinnacle case for me. And then further on, I coincidentally, if we believe in coincidences and synchronicity and all of that, wound up living within an easy half hour of the actual landing site of the Hill case. And there were some further things that people had done some research on, namely that going through the Notch, the White Mountains, Franconia Notch, I would go through there many times at night, and I would see a UFO, and I would get excited because I would like to see another UFO. But no, it was not a UFO. It was the search light on top of Cannon Mountain. And as you drive through the Notch, it will appear. It's on the top of Cannon Mountain. It appears to dip and go up and down type of thing. And somebody researched that, and sure enough, it was put up in 1959. It did exist at that time. And so a man by the name of Jim McDonald, who is a Navy naval, had worked for the Navy and lives up in the Colebrook, New Hampshire area, did a thorough investigation and kind of tracked their whole path and came up with some really interesting information about, thinking it was the light on Cannon Mountain, and also some other sites that were around there that could have been mistaken. You could see the light appearing to come down. You could see a billboard for the Jack-o'-lantern Motel, which is still there. Not the billboard, but it was a huge orange. I remember this as a child. I used to go there, Jack-o'-lantern, and at night, back in 1961, there weren't the lights, street lights on that desolate road. And, if you're driving, I could see how you would see a big orange glowing object that would appear to be on the horizon. If you didn't know what that was one of the things they saw. So he did a really good job at, suggesting alternatives. So I think that they weren't lying. I think they had some sort of sighting, but I'm not so sure that it wasn't something other than some other things that they misinterpreted, and that it got all mishmash, over a period of years before they sought out hypnosis that didn't get turned into, it's a lot of time to elapse where things could get, and even though they said, well, they were separated and they independently reported these things, they were with each other for years. And this was something that was obviously on their mind and of concern because they were going to places and trying to figure it out. So there was discussion between them. It wasn't, and if you listen, this is really interesting, I think, for your listeners. It's on YouTube. You can go and listen to the actual Benjamin Simon
recordings.
Talking, the actual recordings. Yes, you can hear him talking to them and what they're saying. And it's really interesting because it's not exactly how things get locked into the final product. I mean, at first, Barney was reporting them as looking like Nazis, then they were looking like Irishmen, and they said, well, why do you think he's an Irishman? Well, because he has red hair, and it's known that Irish people don't like Negroes. And so when you hear the whole story, and then you hear from horse's mouth, so to speak. The psychiatrists say, I treated them. I saw the whole picture. That is not what happened to them. It did put a hole in the story for me. So at the end of the day, I guess I don't know. I really have some doubts about that particular story. That does not mean I don't think it happens, because I think things are happening. But that particular story, I think, because of researching it further, and I've recently been up there to kind of go through the path myself, I see how that could have happened, how those things were misinterpreted, misinterpreted honestly, and turned into that in their minds.
I brought this up, I think, last time I spoke with Kathy Martin, or when I saw her perhaps in Phoenix. I sat and talked with her a little while about this. And
right.
One of the things she has also mentioned is that there was an ongoing history of abductions and the family, coincidentally, I don't know, right. So there is, this is just a mystery. We won't really get too far. So
no, I mean, we won't. I mean, all I can say about it, and this is only just a little part of my experience, my journey with the UFO story, so it's not here to talk about just this one case. But I guess the most interesting thing for me was to talk about it to this person, the psychiatrist, have him discount it totally, and then suggest that my brother had, in his opinion, had a psychiatric break, that he was probably psychotic and needed immediate psychiatric attention. So that was the bottom line. He certainly wasn't at all feeding into any kind of, treatment that it would be, he needs to go into this specialized UFO people that know how to deal with that. He was like, you need to get him somewhere because he's a sick person. Yeah. So that didn't happen. My brother continued on. He struggled. I like to talk about it. He did not like to talk about it. He was traumatized, and at some point said, I will not talk about this anymore.
Okay, and but before you move on, and you don't have to give any details because you just kind of outlined that just now, but someone did ask a couple of things earlier on in the message board, and that was, did you think, or did your brother assume that this was a malevolent abduction, and also what were the
absolutely malevolent, absolutely.
And did he describe the beings at all?
He did. And okay.
Is that the type of detail you want to stay away from, or are you? Oh
no, I can tell you. I can tell you everything. So the detail, as much as I could, glean at that time, was, and this was really also, I just want to back up a little bit and say, okay, so one could wonder. I was interested in the subject. I brought the books around. I watched the movies. It was around. It was somehow something that was planted in his brain and somehow, came out because of that. But his case was so odd. This wasn't Betty and Barney Hill case. They were just happened to be in the, it sounds like possibly the wrong place at the wrong time, and this encounter happened. This was involved another person that they didn't take. They only took my brother. Right there, that seemed strange to me. And that they told him that they had taken him before and they could continue to take him at any time. And that certainly wasn't any kind of a pattern I had ever heard before. And the whole story really was, a little bizarre. So the description of the beings were not little grays, but very large beings. I believe it's not anything that, since I can really pinpoint, but they weren't small. They were very large. They did terrible things to him, and he absolutely could barely ever talk about it before breaking down into tears, which was not at all his, personality type. And obviously something happened to him. I believe something happened to him. I don't know what, but I certainly it fits a profile, although there were these odd features about having been taken before and one person being sort of suspended and not taking the other one, and that was really rather odd. And so after I talked to Benjamin Simon, I thought, well, maybe he is sick. Maybe he has an issue. And nothing really happened with that. He just continued on. He did have some anxiety issues and wouldn't talk about it with me really. Once in a while he'd hit on the subject. And he did say to me once, well, maybe they took you too. So I thought, well, I have no memory of that. And I have nothing in my life, or I thought so at that time, that would lead me to believe that anything like that had happened to me. So we now, fast forward 10 years later, and I have put my brother's story kind of as a mystery, a question, but thinking maybe it wasn't because of the Benjamin Simon discussion. Possibly this was a psychiatric issue and not a UFO abduction. And I had still continued reading whenever there was something around to read or whatever. But I was home one day from work, and there was a show on television, Sally Jesse Raphael. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but it was a talk show, and I was never home during the day, but I must have been homesick or something, and she was on, and she brought this piano, and the guest was Bud Hopkins. And Bud Hopkins started telling the story. He had written this book, Missing Time, and he said, we're now finding out that there are people, and they can be with other people, but they don't take the other person. They just take one person, and they select out while the other person is sort of suspended. And they can take people over their entire lives, starting from, childhood on. And the more he spoke, the more my brother's case. I thought, this is all this stuff that my brother was saying a decade ago. And I was, this was sort of very enlightening and upsetting. So I read the book. I will say, whether it was just suggestion or whatever, as I read it, there were things about it that were disturbing to me personally. I can't tell you exactly, but as I read it, I did feel uneasy. It really did sound like my brother's case. There was so much about it that was similar. So I called information. It said on the jacket cover that Bud Hopkins, Summers in Wellfleet, and it was summer. And I thought, well, I called information for Wellfleet, and I said, can I have the number for Bud Hopkins? Thinking, of course he's not going to have a listed number, but he did. So I called him, and I thought, hi, it was answering machine days, still, but hi, it was new, answering machines were new. Hi, Kay's my brother, I don't know, whatever I blabbed on, and here's my phone number, and I'm thinking, and he's never going to call me back, but he did. And so we had a really nice exchange, and he totally thought this fit the profile of all of the things that he had been, hearing, and was, as you know, deeply involved in also. And the first one to be treating people in that he was doing hypnosis. That's another subject, but he was doing regressive hypnosis, an attempt, to help people cope. And also he had established the support group in New York City and had offered both of those modalities to my brother. He would see him to hypnotize him. He would offer him a support group in New York, and my brother would hear of none of it. He just did not want to go there. He wanted nothing to do with it whatsoever, and though I did suggest it to him. And Bud Hopkins at that time was just working with David Jacobs and all the whole thing about the Genetic manipulation was just coming out. So I actually heard that firsthand. I never read it. I mean, I heard it right from Bud when he was doing the working with David Jacobson. They were talking about, the genetic manipulations and hybrids and all of that. And, it's quite terrifying for Bud to say, the first person to say this, introduce this to me. Well, I think they're taking eggs and, women, and they're doing these things. And, it was pretty frightening. But it was in those days. And then Bud said to me, independently, not knowing what my brother had said to me, previous years, he said, well, is it possible you have been taken? And I said, when I read your book, I felt uneasy, but no. I mean, there's nothing that I can see here that is a missing time scenario. So, he was always, we had a little bit of a telephone relationship for some years, and he would say, well, whenever you're ready, to be hypnotized. And, I have mixed feelings about that. At that time, I really did not think, there was really anything going on. And I wondered about that. I'm like, well, I'm telling you, no, I don't think so. And, he was, I don't want to say persistent, but, he was very, not too persistent, but I guess he was just offering. It was just there for me to do. So then we skip along to a couple of years later. And this I'm a little uneasy talking about publicly, but I will. So I started having these situations where I would wake up in the middle of the night, and I would hear something like a whirring sound is the best way I can describe it. But it was more than a sound. It was a vibration as well. And I would feel some terror. And I would have what people, I'm sure some people, and I've researched this as well, could be sleep paralysis, and that I couldn't move, I had no control, and I was screaming because I was so frightened. And even though I knew I was screaming, I know that there was no sound coming out, and something happened above my house. Whatever the sound was or whatever was coming from above, and I didn't feel like I was sleeping, and this has never happened to me before, but I felt like I was being taken up. And all I remember, I have no visual of any kind of beings, but I have two senses. One is a very powerful, like a punching of the upper solar plexus from the inside out, very uncomfortable. And that happened at least 3 times that I know of. And and I remember thinking when it happened, on a couple of occasions saying, oh, not this again, not this again. Like, I know what this is. And I would say, hurry up and just get this over with. Like, just get it done, do it, and get it over with. And I had some very bad feeling about a field across the street. And in those days, my situation was I was alone a lot at night, and I did have this feeling that I had been in that field somehow. And even now, it's built up, but when I go by it, I have this uneasy feeling. Wow. So I don't know what that was. And one could say, because of my whole story, I keep an open mind about everything, and I try to explain things in a logical manner. And one of them is, well, you had been in the past talking to Bud Hopkins. This, could have been planted in your brain. You could have been going through some sort of a stressful time, and it played itself out this way. And so all of those things certainly, have to be considered. And I think in the UFO realm, one has to be critically think about these things. Like, you know, you were talking to the guy, you read his book, you know, you had the sighting, you have the interest. So was it planted there, or, you know, did something really happen? You know, and I have no proof. I just remember at that time that when it would get dark, I would start pulling the shades down, and I would think, well, that's not going to stop them. But I was really pretty frightened, and there was nothing I could talk to anyone about, really, because I was working as a hospital social worker. I was a new mother. I had a child. I lived a functional life. You know, to go into work and say, well, you know, last night, it's possible I was taken up inside some craft, and I don't know, they were doing these things and whatever. I mean, it was just nothing that I could really, you know, talk to anyone about. And so anyway, those were my my personal experiences. You know, and after that, whenever I would look for a house, if it had any open fields around it or any open spaces, I wouldn't buy the house, because I just didn't want a potential landing site, although I don't think that's necessary. And I'll just add this one little detail, that years later, I went back to the neighborhood where I had lived, where those experiences happened, I believe happened. And I was talking to a neighbor that I really didn't know that well at the time when I lived there. And I don't know how it even came up, but I said, you know, I was always afraid in that house, because I know this will sound crazy, but I used to hear this sound and this vibration, and she was one of these people who was just the salt of the earth. I just can't imagine she would have any interest in anything other than the, you know, your basic things that you can see in your day-to-day, you know, reality. And she said, I know that sound. I heard it too. I wouldn't go near the window.
Wow.
And that was the only, and it was the only validation I ever had. And I said, it wasn't just a sound, it was a vibration. She said, I heard it too. So,
wow. We're at the top of the hour, and I did promise I was going to share something. We'll continue to talk.
If anyone guesses, what's the prize? You didn't say that.
I don't think anyone could ever guess in a million years.
I think there should be a prize, Martin.
Yeah,
honestly,
we can't do that because it's a live show, and you know, all that stuff.
Okay.
But anyway, we will take calls in the second hour, and that phone number is 603-967-4030 if you'd like to call in. So here goes, and I do want to ask about the question I'll lead into in the second hour is, and don't answer it now, but has your brother ever talked about ongoing? So what happened was, now one of the things I like about you are logical, and you have a skepticism, and that's one of the reasons I thought you'd be a great guest. But anyway, Donna, and I'm telling this to the audience, Donna and I connected because she started listening to the show, I think a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And also, she saw my birthday on Facebook. And it happened to be...
That is true.
So she emailed me, and we ended up meeting at a conference and got into a conversation. We were born... I'll just lay this out. We were born on the same day, in the same year. So in our conversation, we found out we were born in the same town. So further conversation, my sister came out last year from New Mexico, and I said to my sister, because my mother had special care with type 1 diabetes, so she used the same hospital every time. So I said, what hospital were we born in Boston? And my sister said, the woman's lying in. And so I contacted Donna, and I said, Donna, what hospital were you born in? And she was born in the same hospital. So you and I looked at our birth certificates, and we were born in the exact same place, and we were born to the minute 1 hour apart, and I'm older than you.
That's correct.
Yes.
You were born at 7:37 a.m. and I was born at 8:37 a.m. And my first UFO pal, which is kind of you.
We had to be sharing the same room then.
Well, I think we were, somebody could make a story of this. I mean, what are the chances that this, and anybody out there listening to this that does astrology, and you look at, you want to know the time and the place of birth. I mean, it couldn't be, any closer. And then to have both had sightings, which how many people, maybe in this audience people have, but in the general audience have had a sighting and a passion for the subject.
Yeah.
Is pretty.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. Yeah. So an hour to a minute.
Someone just said on the message board, "Old buggers." Thanks a lot, there, Shane from Australia. Yes, we are.
Hi, Shane.
Someone wants to know what they
Shane.
win because Matthew did say birthdays.
Matthew, hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Matthew. Yes,
yeah, you're usually on the message board. So.
I am usually in the chat room with the fabulous chat people. So a shout out to the people in the chat room, and for all the listeners. That is, this is not only a great show, but if you can listen in and become a subscriber and be in that chat room, it's just highly interesting, intelligent, fascinating people in there, and it's a nice exchange in there. So
I always look forward to seeing the same people in there, and then new people. We're getting some new people. A number of people. I think we have 3 from Australia, 1 from Tasmania, and because it's the daytime for them over there. So they're listening. Sure. Some are listening at work, which is great. So here we are in the second hour, and so the question I was leading into: had your brother ever talked again about anything ongoing?
Through the years, again, because I have the interest, I would broach the subject, and sometimes he would reveal a little bit. To my knowledge, he did not. I don't know that he ever sought any counseling. I think he did seek some counseling because he had some, and again, post-incident. He had some anxiety issues, and he did seek counseling. Whether he identified that particular, scenario to them as a trigger or anything that he was, bothered about, I don't know. He continued to suggest that that possibly I had been taken.
Really?
And and so that left me thinking, well, did they say something? But again, reading, as time went on, I was reading all these people, and they, Bud Hopkins certainly was suggesting, and this was again his incident where again it was pre-Bud Hopkins missing time.
Did he actually say he had missing time? I didn't remember that part of the story. He was taken in the woods, and he didn't know what time elapsed. I would say that. I see.
But the things that were unique about that case at that time was that one person was taken and one wasn't, and that there was an indication of having been taken multiple times, and that they could track him at any point, which didn't come into our collective consciousness until I think Bud Hopkins wrote that book, and then this was a decade before. So he I think my feeling about that is that something happened to him. Can I say I've thought of every possibility. He's never reported to me that it's happened again, if that's what people are wondering.
Yeah.
Any future kinds of incidents, if it happened, he didn't tell me. He's certainly fearful was terribly fearful. I think he almost lived a very, I'll say, limited kind of existence, maybe almost, I don't want to say hermit-like, but I don't know, kind
Introverted?
of isolated. I think, yes, Martin, that's a good word for it. So, so that's it.
Did he say that the beings were verbal, or was this just, did he talk about that?
It was telepathic.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, it was telepathic. There was no words.
And he said that before you read Bud Hopkins' book, before he said that early on?
Decade before.
Wow.
I mean, there were too many things about it that even at my young age of probably early 20s, I suppose, I was about maybe not even 20 when I was trying to help him and figure this out. I'm trying to think of how to, he certainly said that they were not verbal, that they were doing this telepathically. So.
Wow. Yeah, I think if the fact that he was supposedly told, that they were watching him and have taken him before, I mean, that could throw anyone into some
that's
trauma.
terrifying. I mean, to think that this could happen, I mean, there go any controls. I mean, again, I'm thinking, well, Betty and Barney Hill were just, I mean, not that anyone deserves to be taken, but they're up there in the 1960s with no lights going through that ridiculous, route, whatever it was.
Route,
was in the middle of the night.
3 or whatever, yeah.
Route 3, very isolated, and okay, I can imagine it happens. There's a landing and whatever, but I mean, this is, but this was that's a one time. That was a one time only. Although if you really get into the Hill case with Betty in the later days, which I do know about, but this is not the forum for that. That's another story and another case, but. That one time thing, because she claims there was some other encounter, but I mean, in that particular case, it was a one time thing, and he had been taken multiple times. So that is pretty frightening. And I certainly had a sense, because of my own, whatever that was happening to me, those dreams. I like to think them as dreams, and I will say that again, Bud offered to do a hypnosis, and my feeling about that was I do not want to know. I am not. Mm-hmm. I do not want to know. I would prefer to think of this as a dream or as sleep paralysis. I would prefer to think of this as anything other than what it could be. And if it is, I saw no use in going through hypnotherapy to find out find out more details or re-experiencing the trauma, because I thought I won't be able to cope. I can only cope thinking, well, I mean, these things are happening, but perhaps they're dreams, and perhaps it's not real, and that was easier for me to deal with. So, I am very aware of the psychic. Think about this. If this really happens to people, how traumatizing it would be.
I do think of that.
To have, there is no control. I mean, you have no control. Yeah. You're being violated. And no one will believe you.
I can't even imagine. I mean, I don't know how, if it really is going on. And I had a conversation earlier with Alejandro on the phone about this. Could this really be happening to all these people? And my life would be in pieces if something like that was happening to me. And Don, I have to ask this question because a few people want to know.
Sure.
Going back to the telepathic, was it telepathic speech, or did he just visualize their intention or just know their intention?
My brother's experience? My experience was it was telepathic. There was no verbal. When they were telling me that, they were just going to do whatever they were doing, and it would be over, and just cooperate and all of that. So mine was, I can't say. And again, I still like to think those were dreams, but
I meant your brothers, actually. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. So my brothers, I can't honestly answer that. He just said there was no verbal communication. It was conveyed to him his mind, so he knew what they were saying, but there was no actual verbal. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Does that make sense? They were able to communicate their thoughts to him, but I can't really speak for him whether it was, in words or whatever. They were just able to make all of this information known, and in particular why they were interested in him. And in fact, he did have an uncanny ability to, with mechanical things. But he was destroyed he was destroyed after this.
So how old was he, would you say he was when this happened to him?
So he must have been 18, maybe. I was 18.
Oh, that's right. I'm
19,
sorry. You did.
I was 19. Yeah.
You did say that.
Yeah, he was in his late teens, and
Yeah.
I have to remember this. At the time I wasn't taking notes because I never thought I would be on the podcast UFO show. So otherwise, I would have taken better notes. But he had to be in his late teens. I think I was still a teenager as well, so 18-ish.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So you noticed instantly a change in his personality?
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. That's really too bad and sad.
Well, it is, and it made me, and how it affected me, and it was in the sense that, talking to Bud Hopkins and reading the books and knowing that somebody was saying, hey, this is going on, and somebody has to believe these people and help them, and not, put them on the psychiatric pathway of delusional, put them on medication, they're having a break with reality, they're psychotic. I mean, that is what the treatment was. I mean, if you were having these experiences, that is kind of the protocol that would, that's what would happen. You're having a break with reality. And Bud was really innovative in that he had some compassion, and he would provide a support group, a network, support safety network for people who were having these experiences. And he was always lovely. Whenever I called him, he was lovely about calling back and offering support and that type of thing. It wasn't totally practical back then for my brother to travel to New York. And honestly, my brother's experience was, I do not want to know about it anymore. It was horrible, and I don't want to talk about it. And I mean, he didn't want support. He just didn't want to. It was so horrible. And what's interesting about his case is that he didn't require hypnosis to remember anything. He just remembered it. He knew it right away. When he came from home from whatever this incident was, there was no, there may have been a lapse of time, but there was no, no need to do, the only reason to do a regression is to gain more information. He said he had all the, that's one of the reasons, but he didn't require that at all. He had as much information as he really wanted to have, and he didn't really want any additional information.
Yeah.
So,
do you know if there was a lot of times people will go into detail that when they have communication, alleged communication, that there's talk about the Earth condition and us, how we're taking care of the planet or whatever. Was there any other part of the conversation other than what you've already mentioned?
No, not in his experience. There was nothing like that. Again, in Martin, had I known that we were going to be here discussing this, I would have paid more attention. But all I remember about his experience is that they had been studying him. They had chosen him on the basis of his some kind of mechanical abilities, and there was no, even in hindsight, having read all the stuff, there was no mention of the Earth, anything, Earth in trouble, and you have to be nice to the Earth, and this catastrophe might happen. But something did happen to me. Mm-hmm. And so are there any other questions about my brother's experience? And I can just tell you, as much as I know. Any other questions about that? And then I can move on. But it did. I mean, it did make me feel. I had and there were no other issues. So you look at this from a critical standpoint. Were there any other issues going on? Were there any other stressors? Was there any abuse of any drugs or anything like that? And the answer is no. So, you have to rule all those things out. And I did have that compassion. Plus I had whatever those dreams were that I was having that made me feel some empathy toward people who may be having these experiences.
Okay, we had a number of questions. It's been discussed on the message board a little bit, and I'm reticent to ask this question, but is your brother still with us?
Ask away. Ask away. Go ahead.
Is your brother still with us?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
And
he's a year younger.
Okay. How's he doing today?
Oh, he's still having issues, but he never really, I would say he never totally recovered, and I can't say that was the only thing that contributed to whatever and we're also estranged, which is totally has nothing to do with this issue. So we don't talk after my mother passed away. We really don't talk. But I believe he still struggles with anxiety and depression. So
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And you do. It's kind of interesting that you do hear of that with any post-traumatic
Can I just
distress.
say one?
Sure.
Another thing, there were multiple suicide attempts. I don't, but so I should add that. But they were not successful, obviously. So after that.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're on, if you're just joining live, we're on the show with Donna Walker, and anyone is welcome to call in, or you can pose a message up on the message board at podcastufo.com. The phone number is 603-967-4030. So Donna, did this influence you to get into regression hypnosis yourself?
It did, because, that was the key thing that seemed, I became a follower of John Mack. That was really interesting to me, that somebody of his caliber, a psychiatrist at Harvard, that was saying, this is happening. These people are not lying. There's something going on. Somebody of that caliber is just not going to put their reputation at risk. And he certainly took enough flack for it. And but Harvard did keep him on. I mean, I know he had some challenges with that. But certainly my fantasy was at some point to help people to believe that these things actually could be occurring, and to deal and treat, not just for information retrieval, but more importantly, and this is what Benjamin Simon was doing, it wasn't for retrieval of information to write a story. It was the treatment of the stress, the post-traumatic stress that happens when these things occur, and to take these people seriously and have some compassionate, a compassion for that. So that did motivate me to delve into hypnotherapy and understand what it actually is, and what was this magical thing that you could do to people to put them into these states to retrieve this information. So I took it on very seriously. And,
yes, you did. We were communicating at the time, and I want you to. This is very important. I think I want to talk about this. The do's and don'ts, and because this is, it's groundbreaking. First of all, when people early on, like Jacobs and Hopkins, were doing it, that no one knew where to steer the boat. But there can be planted suggestives that will make someone, kind of go along with their own story. So, can you explain? Because I know you're very careful in your logic, the do's and don'ts, and how you believe things should be done, and what type of information can come out. I know you said it's basically to treat, the stress part of it, but if you would go into that, I'm very interested to hear all this.
Okay, so basically, the hypnotherapy is a focused, concentrated. It's a very focused, almost like a meditative state that brings you so that you can access your subconscious mind. And all sorts of things are in your subconscious mind. Things that happened, dream fragments, imagination. There are all sorts of things. And so if you think of it this way, when you hear about the movie version of what happens with hypnosis, that you go back and, whatever you retrieve is the truth and all of that. It's like a truth serum. It's not quite that way. And it's very controversial, the use of hypnosis. You can, for example, when you hear about and somebody couldn't remember the license plate number and they did hypnosis and they remembered, that can happen. I mean, it is like the subconscious mind is recording things. And so say you're anxious about something and it's blocking out that memory, you can lull people. Basically, you have a patter. I have a very, very gentle patter and put people into this lulling state. And they can go into the state and, get rid of all these surrounding thoughts and just focus. And that might free up that memory. And in the same way, if somebody so that could happen. You could remember something you lost, or you could remember something, and you could use that in a case, like a legal case. Although courts are very, very don't really allow that. It's used as a tool. You have to have corroborating evidence. So, in and of itself, the hypnosis part is very controversial and not always admissible in court, depending on the situation. So if something has happened to you, like an abduction, sure, you can put this person into that state, and whatever they've been blocking out, you can put them into a state, and perhaps they can remember some details about that situation. However, the problem is, if it really happened, you might be able to remember it. The problem is that just because you go into a state and you start recounting things does not make it so, if that makes sense. It does not make it necessarily so. It's just a tool to be used. And you need to use it very carefully, and I think it has been misused by people who are well-meaning. I won't use names unless you want me to, about people who didn't have any. This is very serious. You're fooling with people's minds, and they possibly have had one of the most traumatic experiences that you can imagine. An entity, I mean, it's traumatic when, you're beaten up by a human. But can you imagine an entity that you don't know if they could come back and what it was? And, so it's very traumatic. It's a very traumatic situation, and you should be dealing with them in an effort to heal the trauma. And there are people who have no clinical skills whatsoever, who just do this meditative state and have people reporting things, and I don't know really what their skills are to help them on an ongoing basis. I think the support group was certainly a nice effort by Bud Hopkins. He was always nice to me, and I think that he was his intentions. He was a really great artist. I mean, he had this home in Wellfleet. He had this place in New York. I don't think he needed the money. I don't think who knows how much, I think he was motivated by, his own sighting, and really had some empathy for people that were having these experiences and trying to, deal with them. And he did the best he could, but he was an artist and not a therapist. So, I can't speak for, I don't think he was motivated by, in my experience, I mean, he never was so pushy as to say, well, I need to write another book, Donna, so get over here and let me regress you. I mean, he wasn't, I don't think he was motivated by that. I think he certainly, wanted to document it. I think he thought it was, something that was, hugely important. So anyway, I do have this issue with people who have very limited training with hypnotherapy and no training at all with counseling training to deal and heal, help and heal with the trauma. And certainly I have issues with people who are leading in any way. There is one person who is quite prominent in the field who has written many books on doing hypnotherapy, and has an outstanding case where somebody did. I don't know if they recorded it somehow. I think it was an audio recording. And in that recording, as I have reviewed it, everything wrong has happened. You just do not lead people. You do not tell the people about other cases you're working on. You do not plant seeds in these people's minds, that are vulnerable. And it was totally unethical and inappropriate. And how this person continues on, I have no idea how that goes on. But, I do have some very strong, feelings about the hypnosis process. And I will tell you, for the few people that I've worked with on this particular subject, because I'm not finding, I am registered with the Free People, which is the Foundational Research. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's Ray Hernandez group that I think Edgar Mitchell headed up. And so I'm on these sites, if you want to be regressed, and I'm not getting a lot of people. I thought when I did this, became this regressional hypnotherapist, that of course they would be lining up. And I will say that I do this for people that I do another kind of regression that I do charge for, but not this. I mean, this is something I see people as, and this is another subject about, whether you're a victim. Now there's a new group of people that are contactees, and they're saying, no, I'm not a victim. I'm okay with this whole process, but that's that's another subject. But for people who this has happened to, I've been in that feeling of not having control, and all of those feelings that go along with it. And I feel that I have the compassion and the ability and the skills to help them work through that. And I will also say that I have worked through my own anxiety with whatever happened to me. Hopefully it was a dream. And I still like to think that. And they have left me alone. If I had, although I think I mentioned this to you recently. If they are coming in, I wouldn't mind if they came and got me and took me away till after the elections. I wouldn't mind that, actually. Like
I think we did have that exchange. Yeah,
I think if they could come and get me, and take me. I used to be like a little afraid, but now I'm sort of thinking, it might, wherever they are, it might be better. So
yeah.
I don't know.
But you know what? If they bring you back after the election, I don't think it's going to be very pretty either.
Exactly.
Whatever happens.
So maybe I will stay. Maybe I will just, maybe I'll just relocate.
Okay, I promised people I would never go political, so I'll try to stay away from that.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
So
we're on the same page with that.
Now,
go ahead.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask you this now. So, I would like to extend this out to the listener. If there is someone out there, or you yourself you think you're experiencing something, and you live in New England, I'll put it that way, because, pardon me, the person I believe you were speaking about earlier, that you did not really see eye to eye with, I believe does some hypnosis on the phone. And what is your thoughts about that as well?
Oh, and I had a good conversation today with my friend Debbie Tripp, who has had some experiences and is into this whole realm herself, and we did have a discussion about this, and it was nice to get her support when we were talking about doing hypnosis via phone or Skype. It used to be Skype to me is perhaps a little better, at least in my training. I was trained to observe patients or clients for ab reactions. And so while you're, lulling them and not leading, very important not to lead them. When they get into the state, you say, look around and tell me what you see. You don't say, well, are they gray? Well, are their eyes slanted? Well, I mean, you just very open-ended questions, not leading at all, observing eye flutter. There's a number of things you're observing because it can be very telling in the process. And so how anybody can call someone in Australia and talk endlessly to them and then tell them about other clients that they're treating and what they said, and talk about, and I know some listeners out there know exactly who I'm talking about, underwear and send me your underwear, all of this. To me, doing this remotely, to me, is not the preferable way. With Skype, however, because you can observe people, I believe it's a little bit better because you can observe them. You don't know if somebody is I've regressed people and they start shaking and they start having ab reactions, and you need to be able to address that at the time it's happening, and you just can't see that in a telephone call. And maybe with Skype it's a little better, but I think it's a no. I think it's not preferable at all.
Yeah. Okay. Someone also wanted to know, pardon me, with the few that you have actually regressed, were there stories what you expected? Were there interesting stories?
Well, so these are more like the abduction story. They're more no, they weren't actually. They're more sort of like I wanted them to come, or it's these entities that they wake up and there are these entities in the house. They know that they're in the house type of thing. It's not like, and they were taking a board and they were taking, sperm. So it's not what I expected. I will say that it is not anything. I thought there would be lines. I talked to a friend today and she had the same experience. I mean, I don't know what this is saying, that there aren't all of these. It doesn't seem, that they may be flocking to the Yvonne Smiths and the other person that I won't say or whatever. But we thought, well, this is kind of interesting, and I won't take this personally because all I am is listed in some sort of listing in MUFON or whatever for treatment, and I'm not getting a lot of response. And I asked the Starborn people, and I've volunteered for them as well to be the volunteer hypnotherapist, free of charge, to help them. And I'm not getting any calls. So
where could someone a listener, say there's a listener that either knows someone or they're having some issues that they or think they want to be regressed. How can they find on the free webs your name and contact information on the free website, and also what was the last one? Star.
Star. I would say the free. Free is probably the best one. If I'm listed with them, and so that would be the best one. But my friend and I did sort of think like. We're thinking, well, how many people are there that are out there? Maybe there's not that many people. Is it that they only want to go to the person where they're going to wind up in a book? Or, it's very curious to me. That maybe they're out there and they just don't know where to turn. I don't know. I mean, I've tried to make myself as available as possible, but she's not seeing a lot of. She said exactly the same thing. Like we're just going to be like so busy doing this, and there aren't that many people. So I don't know what that's. My answer, my response is I don't know. What that's about. But yes, that was the motivation for me to learn about hypnotherapy, to understand. If people are going under hypnosis, does that mean that this really happened to them? I wanted to understand it. When I do things and I take it on, I want to understand it completely and fully. And so I thought, well, I'll just take the training and to understand. And so I do understand that perhaps it happened. But it isn't necessary. It did not necessarily happen. It does not mean it was the truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So just for the listener out there, so the free website is experiencer.org. That's where you go to look Donna up on that. And there's a little search bar. You could probably just type her name in there. And but you're under, I'm sure you're about, there's a drop-down menu. I just can't do it while we're doing the show.
Right, there is a drop-down menu. Yes.
But I'll tell you what, the listener, if you're interested, I will put that link in the show notes. So check that out. Yeah. Okay. So if anyone can call in, if you'd like, and that number is 603-967-4030. There was, I think that's, that. There's another question that came up earlier, and I forgot it, and that is, are either you or your brother Rh negative for blood type?
I know who is asking that question, I bet.
Yes.
And yes. No, neither of us are negative. That is a good question, however, and thank you for asking us, but no, we're both positive.
Okay. All right. That is a question that does come up a lot because, there's some type of connection there.
Tom Reed, I think, and a number of people, are Rh negative. There does. I will tell you that, I'm trying, in the field I have the interest. I have some healthy skepticism. I look at the whole thing critically. I try to think of any other kinds of things that could be, the reality. So I have looked at things like, gee, did were there any other odd stories in my family? And my grandmother did tell me this crazy story that I started putting together, later, that she saw some weird thing in the sky. And, but nothing like abduction or a lot of UFO sightings. I know this seems to go through family lines, but nothing all like that. I was concerned about my children, and my daughter, when she was 3, screamed one night, and just a bloody scream, horrible scream. And I went up to her room, and I will say that when I was going through this whole thing, thinking that possibly things were coming in at night, that my concern was, take me, but don't hurt my child. I do whatever, and it was an additional anxiety. But she screamed, and I ran to her side, and she said that the man in the room had come into her room and slapped her, and she'll still talk about this, that she was feeling some slapping on her side, and became pretty traumatized. And we still talk about it. I mean, she's an adult now, but we still talk about it. So, well, now as an adult, what was that? Just that I was awake, and there was slapping, and I felt it, and it was a man. And my mother had been visiting me at the time, and we both went to her side, and so again, a witness to that, and so I don't know what that is. But other than that, nothing, through the bloodline or historically that I can really tell. So.
Wow.
So I
okay.
I have had, go ahead. I have had a couple of other things that happened to me, and I didn't really ever relate them. And this is where you come in. I never related them to the UFO phenomenon at all until I started listening to your show and going to experiences. I went to their conferences, and that's a great conference. I think they're doing it again in August for people, that want to explore this further. But I had a couple of things happen to me in my childhood, and I they were just odd things, and I never connected it to anything until I started listening to your show. And started, and also I listen to another one frequently called The Unexplained with Howard Hughes, and so there've been some similar.
Good show.
But a great show, yeah. And and that is when I was about 5 years old. Again, I have a very clear memory from about 4 on, and flashbacks from 2 and 3 on, verified by my mother. I woke up, and I was surrounded by some skeletons, I thought. And it was terrifying. And I had this episode of sort of feeling some sort of paralysis, I guess. I wasn't able to move, and then I finally was. And I told my mother, ran into my mother's room, and she said, well, you're having a nightmare, and think happy thoughts, and think about nice things, and go back to bed. And so that's what I thought that was. I wouldn't even bring it up again to anyone, except I'm sure I've had many nightmares, but that one was really something. And I had a couple of other things I won't go into detail, but sort of strange like that. And I started listening to your show, and I have found in talking to people who have had experiences that it seems like things like that happen to them at various times of their lives, starting from early ages. around 5 years old having these things. And maybe they were nightmares, but, some of them there seems to be, I guess when there seems to be a pattern and trend, and now that we have the internet and we can listen to shows like yours, maybe something I've said in this interview has resonated with somebody, just as I have heard other people speak. And Debbie Tripp and I had a long conversation, and we are totally on the same page that we both have had other paranormal kinds of experiences that we wouldn't have necessarily equated with a UFO sighting or these experiences, but it's curious that these other things have happened. I'm particularly sensitive. I guess I would describe myself as a sensitive and an empath, and that I have an inordinate amount of synchronicities and strange things that happen to me, happily all experienced with other people, so that I know that it's not just me. And other people that I've heard on your show, and Debbie Tripp herself has had these kinds of things. So we don't know how they're connected, but Kathleen Martin and Denise Stoner have written books about this, and that there seems to be some sort of connection with, having, whether, it's the chicken or the egg. Were you already sensitive and so you drew this to you, or is the connection with this other entity, whatever they are, did they somehow, provide this or, instill this in you? So that's sort of out there for some kind of, debate.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. So I was just looking up, someone wanted to know earlier, what do you think these abductions are all about? What's your thoughts? We're coming up, we only have about 5 minutes
on the conclusion. So. Right, on the conclusion. So the conclusion is I have had a journey through, all of this, and my conclusion is that there are certainly, that reality as we know it is more than what we think it is. And that certainly some people seem to be more aware and sensitive to all of that. That I am not sure. I would say whether these entities, for example, if my brother, are they extraterrestrial or interdimensional? I couldn't possibly, I would not possibly be able to say. I think something is happening, and I couldn't possibly say. My own personal feeling is that there is some sort of visitation by another realm. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's from another place or this place in another dimension. I don't know. I think we are seeded. I think we have been seeded by another civilization. I guess if I'm put against the wall, Martin, like you're putting me against the wall, I think that I'm into the ancient alien. I'm into all of that. I believe that we were seeded by an alien society, and that we have been observed for whatever reason. I don't think it's. I think that it's telling that there was an onslaught of sightings around the use of nuclear weapons around the Second World War with the Foo Fighters, and all kinds of sightings, major sightings, seem to Roswell and Bentwaters and all that seem to happen around places where there are nuclear weapons. I believe we have been studied, are being studied. I don't know why. I do think we are some sort of a reality series, possibly for somebody that just says, let's just put these people...
The Truman Show, right? Is that what it is?
It's the Truman Show. Exactly right, Martin. It's like, let's put these factions down there. We're going to have, every time, we're going to have some go to this way and some go that way. And then we'll just watch them, it's like, we're always so polarized. Like, is that for entertainment value? And let's add this and let's add that. So, do I have this? Oh, there is this, thought that, they're here to help us, and that, that may be true. I think it's telling about the, the nuclear situation, but I don't know. I mean, so in a nutshell, I guess it could be anybody, but I do feel that, it is extraterrestrial. And if for people that say, well, they couldn't get here, and that's for our very limited, tiny human minds that we can't possibly, I don't think we can understand the whole, physics as it may be.
That's right. The physics exists. We just have not discovered. If we think we've discovered all of physics, then that's a crazy thought. And that's what a lot of mainstream science assumes. There's probably a lot more to explore out there. So this has been great. I looked on the website, on the free website. I couldn't find you on that page. So if I think we will talk after the show quickly, and I will make sure that the listener will have your contact information somehow in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would love to, help anyone who, wants to explore this, further.
Right. Excellent. So, Donna, it's been a real pleasure. And
thanks, Martin.
Yeah, we've talked about synchronicities. We've had
I know.
quite a few of them, haven't we?
we have, for whatever that means. We have, and we can certainly have each other to be the witness. And same day, an hour apart, in the same place, and here we are. So I don't know.
That's right.
I don't know. So anyway, it's been a joy. It's been a joy being on this side of the chat room, and I'm a big fan of your show. And thanks again for having me. And I hope somebody I helped somebody, or that was interesting to your listeners.
Yes.
So,
yep.
Thanks a lot.
It was they were very kind in the chat room too. So that's good. All right.
Oh.
So that's it for the show.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so that's it for the show. And next week we have Sam Maranto coming on out in Illinois. He's a friend. He's been on a number of times. So Sam will be on next week. So thanks so much for your support, and thank you for listening live. And we'll be back next week. Remember always to keep your eyes to the sky, and we'll catch you next week.